All right, so today this is lesson 3-4, part 1. This has two parts. This is multiply a fraction by a fraction. So up to now, we had been multiplying a fraction by a whole number, but now we're going to multiply a fraction by a fraction. So write down what you know or what you think we're going to have to do to multiply a fraction by a fraction. Okay, so let's look at this first problem. If you are in class and you have your math boards, or if you're at home and you have your math boards, get those out and turn it over to the part where it has, your fraction bars. Okay, so you saw a board into 4 equal pieces. You saw one of the pieces in half. What fraction of the original board do you have? So we're going to model this on the math board. And I don't have my math board, but I can still model it for you. So this is the same thing as 1/2 of 1/4, or you can say 1/2 times 1/4. And let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so I know that I have divided it up into 4 equal pieces, right? Because it tells me that I saw it into 4 equal pieces. So here is my fourths. Okay, so find your fourths on your math board, or just draw out a rectangle with fourths, and that's what I did here. Okay, so you have to pause the video to do this with me, and then come back to me. So I have my fourths, but it says I saw one of the pieces in half. So one of the fourths that I have here, I cut it in half. So there I drew my line in half. Okay. So what fraction of the original board do I have? So I have this little itty bitty piece here, right? But if I divide this in half, then I got to divide my other fourths, 1/4 in half. So I went ahead and did that here with my lines. I divided that one in half, divided that one in half, divided that one in half, divided that one in half. Now that gave me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 equal pieces, right? And how much do I have? I only have 1 out of the 8 equal pieces. So if you think of it mathematically, right, all you're doing is you're just multiplying numerator times numerator. 1 times 1 is 1. Denominator times denominator, 2 times 4 is 8. 1/8. So I'm getting 1/8. So I know that the math is easy. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. I totally get that. Totally easy, right? But the most important things, I want you to understand what we are doing. Okay. I'm taking a half of a fourth. So here's my whole. I'm dividing it up into 4 equal pieces. So I only have a fourth. I only have this piece, 1/4, and I'm dividing that 1/4 in half. So I'm taking part of something. I'm taking a part of a part. That's why it's getting smaller, because I'm taking a part of a part. That's what I need you to understand. Okay, let's look at another one. So you can either, if you understand that part, you can do this one on your own, or you can do it with me. If you have your math board, do it in your math board. If not, just draw it out on your math notebook. You have 4/5 of a candy bar. How much is 2/3 of it? So you have 4/5, and you're only taking 2/3 of the 4/5. So write the equation on your board. Use the board to solve it. What do you notice? So let's take a look at that. Okay, so I went into the fifths, right? Because you have 4/5. So that's what I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4/5. So here's divided up into 5. And this is the only part that I have in my candy bar. I don't have a whole. So that's 4/5. How much is 2/3 of it? 2/3 of something tells me to multiply. So 4/5 times 2/3, right? So that's my multiplication equation that I have. So, and this is what it looks like. All right, so let's take a look to see how we did this. So the math part is easy. right? Because 4/5 of 2/3 of it tells me to multiply. Of tells me to multiply. So 4/5 times 2/3, 4 times 2 is 8, 5 times 3 is 15, right? So that part's easy. But what I want you to see is what it looks like. So here again is my 4/5 that I have, and I need it into thirds. So I'm taking each one of those fifths and I'm dividing them into 3 equal pieces. I'm dividing my whole thing into each segment is divided up into thirds. Does that make sense? Each segment divided up into thirds. Then I'm taking 2/3 of each of those segments. I'm taking 1/3, 2/3 of that segment. Here's my next one. I'm taking 1, 2. I'm taking 1, 2, 1, 2. Notice I'm not taking 2 from this segment because I don't have that. I only have 4/5. If I was taking that, that would mean that I would have my whole, but I don't have a whole. I only have 4/5. And you notice how much did I take? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is the same thing. 8/15. So what I want you to notice is when you take a fraction of a fraction, so I'm taking a fraction of a fraction, not a whole, we're dividing the whole into smaller parts. So I'm dividing it up into smaller parts. That's very important for you to remember. Smaller parts means there are more parts in the whole. When there are more parts, the denominator is larger. So I'm going to repeat it again because it's really important. When you take a fraction of a fraction, you're dividing into smaller parts. So when you're multiplying a fraction times a fraction, you're making smaller parts. So that's why the denominator is getting bigger because you're making more smaller parts. Okay, so try another one. What do you notice when you multiply 1/2 times 1/4? So go ahead and multiply 1/2 times 1/4 and then tell me what you notice. Write it down in your math notebook, what you notice, and then we'll compare. Okay, so hopefully you did numerator times numerator, numerator times numerator. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 4 is 8, 1/8. So what do you notice? It's getting smaller, right? So your answer gets smaller. When you multiply a fraction times a fraction, your product gets smaller because you're taking a part of a part. So stop the video and write this down. So a fraction of a fraction, when you're taking a fraction of a fraction of a part, you're taking part of a part, so the denominator gets larger because you're making smaller parts. The whole is being divided into smaller parts because you're taking a part of a part. So stop the video and write this down, please, and then come back to me. Okay, so try some. So 5 times 1/4, 1/5 of 1/2, 2/5 times 1/3, 4/5 of 4/5. So do those and then come back to me. All right, so 5 times 1/4, you should have put a 1 underneath for your denominator. 5 times 1 is 5, 4 times 1 is 4, 5/4. The 5 is bigger than the 4, so it tells me I must divide, right? 4 goes into 5 how many times? 1 time, good. And how many more do I need to get to 5? 1, so 1 and 1/4 is my answer for that one. 2/15, 2 times 1 is 2, 5 times 3 is 15, 2/15. I can't simplify that anymore because 2 doesn't go into 15. Okay, so remember, of just means multiplication, right? Don't let that throw you off. So 1 times 1 is 1, 5 times 2 is 10, 1/10. It's already a unit fraction. Unit fraction is the simplest form. I can't simplify anymore. 4/5 times 4/5. 4 times 4 is 16. 5 times 5 is 25. 16 over 25. Can I divide 16 by 2? Yes. Can I divide 25 by 2? No. Can I divide 16 by 3? No. Can I divide 25 by 3? No. Can I divide 16 by 4? Yes. Can I divide 25 by 4? No. So I can't simplify it. Okay. So that's it. All right. So what did you learn today? So write down in your math notebook what you learned today and do a problem that's similar to one of the ones that we had today. So do a fraction times a fraction, and then a reflection or a question you may have.